Hello, everyone. My name is Xulang Zhang, and I will be presenting our paper for LREC 2026, titled Implicit Bias in Peer Review Through the Lens of Language Abstraction. Here is the outline of today's presentation. First, I will provide the background and introduce the research questions of this paper. And then I'll describe the methodology, and I'll also be presenting the experiments and analysis of this paper. And lastly, I'll present the conclusion. So first, let's give you a little bit of the background of our paper. So as we all know, peer review is an important part of the scholarly publishing process. Its credibility and fairness are often scrutinized, and bias is one of the aspects worthy of investigation. There are many forms of biases that could exist in the peer review process. Existing NLP research on this topic mostly focus on predefined bias, such as inappropriate language use related to gender, race, and nationality. However, there could be subtler biases in peer review that do not fit neatly into these explicit categories. So, therefore, in this paper, we attempt to analyze the implicit biases in peer review comments with a more generalized approach. And to achieve this, we adopted the generalized linguistic intergroup bias, LIB. So the core theory of this LIB theory is that the usage of language and language abstraction can express and transmit biases implicitly. So that means the more abstract a statement is, the more it suggests consistency across different times and situations, and the more difficult it is to be verified and to present refuting evidence. For example, saying a person is untrustworthy is more abstract and thus transmit more bias than to say that the person lied about whether they did an experiment some Friday afternoon or not. So with the LIB theory in mind, we aim to create an automated tool that measures the abstraction level of a statement. So we achieve this by training a model on automated data to predict an abstraction score. And then we apply the model to analyze peer review comments. So for this, we use an LLM to process the peer reviews into sections and then compute the abstraction score of each review and its section. And then we analyze the results to answer the following research question. So the first research question is, does the reviewer's preference for the paper manifest in the differential use of abstraction? And to analyze this, we utilize the two-sample t-test and z-test on the abstraction scores of reviews for accepting and rejecting papers. And the second research question is that, is there a distinction between the abstraction of reviews for accepted and rejected papers? For this, we also adopted the same approach as the first question. And then for the last research question, does the use of abstractions in reviews affect the method reviewer's decision? And to analyze this, we use the ANCOVA on the abstract scores of the weakness section of the reviews. So next we'll introduce the methodology of our paper. So first, let's see some preliminaries. So how is abstraction defined and how is it measured? So in the field of the LIB study, abstraction level of a utterance is measured by the linguistic category linguistic category model, LCM. So the LCM counts for descriptive terms in a sentence, such as verbs and adjective, and gives them weighted scores. So there are 4 categories of descriptive terms in LCM. The first is DAV. So these are very concrete verbs that has a specific physical activity attached to it. So for example, A hits B. The hit in this sentence is a DAV. And then a little bit more abstract is the IAV. So this category of verbs are a little bit more abstract than the AV. So they describe a physical act, but without any direct implication of human body involvement. So for example, in the sentence, A hurts B, the hurt here is a IAV. And then the more abstract category is the SV, state verbs. So this type of verb describe a state that lasts for long periods of time without clear beginning and ending. So for example, in this sentence, A hates B, hate is a SV. And then lastly, the most abstract category is the ADJ. They are usually adjective or adverbs. For example, in this sentence, A is violent, then violent is a ADJ. And then to compute the abstraction score, we give each category a score. So from 1 of the AV to 4 for the ADV. And then we give them a weighted score to compute our abstraction level. And then here is an illustration of our abstraction scoring model. As you can see, it is a 2-step pipeline model. First, we obtain the text embedding using a Roberta-based encoder. And then a binary classifier detects whether the input is valid for the LCM coding. So if not, we follow the LCM convention and score it as 0. And if it's valid, then it is passed on to a regression model to output the abstraction score. So the score, as we introduced before, is a continuous value between 1 and 4. So this model is trained on a set of manually scored data from a previous study on LCM. And then for the purpose of our study, we adopted the ICLR dataset. It contains 8,151 reviews for 5,289 ICL submissions spanning from the year 2017 to 2019. The dataset also contained the corresponding scores of each review. So to simplify our analysis, we define a review as recommending to accept a paper when the rating is above 6 and recommending to reject a paper when below 5. And then the rest are considered to be borderline. And all the cases are listed in the table here. And then, as we briefly mentioned before, we utilize the DeepSeek chat API to store the sentences in each review into 4 categories. So summary of the paper, strengths, weaknesses, and other comments. This is to see if the use of language abstraction shows different patterns in different aspects of a peer review comment. So to investigate R1, we conducted two sample T tests and Z tests on the abstraction scores of comments in different categories to examine whether there is a difference among the distributions of abstract scores of review recommending acceptance and rejection. So on this slide, for brevity, we only show the results of the z-test. So results show that overall, reviews recommending to accept are less abstract than the ones recommending to reject. And then looking at the different aspects of review comments, we find that for summary, they are more abstract when recommending to accept. And for strength, also more abstract when recommending to accept. And for weaknesses and other comments, they are the contrary, so less abstract when recommending to accept. And then to investigate R2, we conducted also t-tests and z-tests on the abstraction score of review sentences of the accepted papers and the rejected papers. So as you can see, results indicate that reviews from the accepted papers are significantly less abstract than the rejected one. And then looking at the different aspects of review comments, we see that the patterns of abstraction use are quite similar to what is observed from the previous experiment. And we can also see from the result table here that the distribution of abstract scores of the weaknesses aspect for accepted and rejected papers are quite different than other aspects. So its difference between the opposing decision is significantly larger than that of the other aspects. And we show a visualization of this distinction in the graph shown here. And then to investigate R3, we perform the ANCOVA analysis with binary logistic regression, where the abstract scores of weaknesses are the independent variables, the decision, so the accepted and rejected are as the dependent variable, and then the recommendation as the covariant. So the overall model, as you can see here, is statistically significant. And we found that the abstraction score of weaknesses had a small but significant negative effect on whether a paper is accepted or not after controlling for the recommendation. So this means that accounting for the impact of reviewers' scoring, there could be a higher chance of the paper being rejected when the weaknesses in the reviews are described more abstractly. So to conclude, this paper conducted a implicit bias analysis on peer review comments using the CLM from the LIB theory. So with experiments, we answered 3 research questions. So the findings are, with statistical significance, the reviews recommending to reject a paper are more abstract than the ones recommending to accept. And also with statistical significance, the reviews of rejected papers are more abstract than the accepted ones. And lastly, although the recommendation, so rated score of reviews affect the method reviewer's decision, statistical significance suggests that the usage of abstraction in the weakness aspects of reviews may also play a potential role in the final decision of a paper. So that would be all for my presentation. Thank you for listening.